He called her uneducated. Now she's the one writing the laws he once enforced. The afternoon sun streamed through the dusty windows of the old community hall in Georgia, painting golden streaks across the crowd. The air buzzed with murmurs, shuffling papers, and the rhythmic clicking of camera shutters. Politicians lined the stage like performers, each waiting for their turn to impress, until Naomi Carter stepped forward. She wasn't dressed in power or prestige, but in quiet confidence. Her hands, calloused from years of teaching, gripped the wooden podium. When she spoke, her voice carried warmth, soft, melodic, laced with a Southern accent that told stories of faith, family, and resilience. For a moment, the noise dulled. People listened. Naomi spoke about overcrowded classrooms, about children who studied under flickering lights, and teachers who bought their own supplies. Her words weren't grand, but they were real, and that made them powerful. Then, a sharp chuckle sliced through the air. Senator Richard Vaughn, polished and smirking, leaned toward his aide. "Maybe if she spoke proper English," he said loudly. "I'd take her seriously." A ripple of laughter followed, low, cruel, contagious. Naomi's fingers trembled against the microphone. For a heartbeat, her voice faltered, but then she lifted her chin, looked straight ahead, and kept speaking. Naomi stepped down from the podium, her heart pounding in her chest like a muffled drum. The laughter still echoed faintly in her ears, but she kept her chin lifted, refusing to let them see the sting. Her eyes shimmered, not from weakness, but from the weight of holding herself together in a room that had already decided who she was. As the hearing ended, people drifted out in clusters of chatter and applause. Naomi lingered near the doorway, gathering her notes, when she heard his voice again. Senator Vaughn's. Smooth, arrogant, effortless. "She's the poster girl for pity votes," he told a reporter, chuckling. Sweet, but way out of her depth. The words struck her like a slap, sharp and cold. For a moment, she froze. Then quietly, she turned and walked away. No confrontation, no tears. Just silence, the kind that burns deeper than anger. That silence followed her home. Inside her small kitchen, she stood before the mirror above the sink. The fluorescent light flickered, painting her reflection in pale gold. She studied her face, the exhaustion, the resolve, and let out a long, steady breath. "They'll learn my name," she whispered. And for the first time, she believed it. The months slipped by, marked not by school bells or lesson plans, but by the rhythm of change. Naomi had left her classroom behind, trading chalk dust for microphone cords and folding chairs in dimly lit community centers. Each evening she gathered small crowds, mothers, bus drivers, janitors, young students, and spoke about education, fairness, and the power of a single vote. At first, her voice wavered, haunted by the echo of laughter from that hearing. But little by little it grew steadier, richer. The same Southern cadence they once mocked now carried conviction. People began to listen. Then they began to believe. "Your accent doesn't define your intelligence," she would say. Her hand pressed over her heart. "Your voice defines your power." Soon, word spread beyond her town. Local reporters came to see the woman who spoke like poetry and truth in equal measure. Her calm fire, the way she never raised her voice yet filled every room, inspired others to rise beside her. One evening, as she packed up after a town hall, she overheard someone whisper, "Vaughn's seat will open next year." Naomi paused, the corner of her mouth curving into a quiet, knowing smile. The spark had caught fire. When Naomi announced her candidacy, the world laughed before it listened. Senator Richard Vaughn led the chorus, smirking before the cameras as he declared her unqualified, uneducated, and unintelligible. His words dripped with disdain, crafted to humiliate, but Naomi didn't take the bait. She didn't shout back. She simply smiled, adjusted the microphone, and began to speak. Her campaign wasn't built on slogans or spectacle. It was built on stories, real ones. She spoke of classrooms without enough chairs, of children sharing worn-out textbooks, of single mothers balancing 2 jobs and still coming home to help with homework. Each word was steady, deliberate, and full of quiet truth. And that voice, that accent once mocked, became her anthem. People leaned in to hear it, because in her tone, they found something they'd forgotten politics could have: sincerity. When debate night arrived, the stage lights burned bright. Vaughn sat back in his chair, grinning with the arrogance of a man certain of victory. But as Naomi began to speak, calm, poised, and unshakable, the room fell silent. Her words cut through the noise like a clear bell. Vaughn's grin faltered. For the first time, he had no clever retort, only silence. Election night unfolded beneath a blanket of restless anticipation. The city pulsed with noise. Televisions blaring, crowds chanting, and reporters shouting over the hum of uncertainty. Early results painted Vaughn as the sure victor. His campaign office erupted with cheers, champagne glasses clinking, his confident grin returning to its usual smugness. Across town, Naomi sat in a modest hall surrounded by volunteers, her hands clasped tightly. The numbers were close, painfully close. Yet she waited in silence, the same silence that had once fueled her resolve. Then came the final precinct. A hush fell over the room as the announcer's voice trembled through the speakers. And with the last count-in, Naomi Carter takes the lead. The hall erupted. Tears, laughter, and disbelief filled the air as people embraced her, chanting her name, the same name that once drew mockery. By morning, headlines flashed across the nation. Teacher turned activist defeats longtime senator in historic upset. Weeks later, Naomi stepped into the Senate chamber, her heels echoing softly on the marble floor. Vaughn stood among the guests, smaller now, humbled. Their eyes met. Naomi offered a polite nod, calm, dignified, victorious. Vaughn looked away, his silence speaking louder than any insult ever could. The Senate chamber gleamed under the midday light, grand and solemn, a place built for power, not for dreams. Yet here stood Naomi Carter, steady at the podium, her palms resting against the polished wood. The microphone before her shimmered under the lights, the same kind of microphone where, not long ago, her voice had been ridiculed. For a moment, she simply breathed, taking it all in, the sea of faces, the history in the air, the gravity of the seat she now held. Then she began to speak. For years, she said, her voice calm and resonant, I was told my voice didn't belong in rooms like this. Her words floated through the chamber, rich and melodic in that same southern accent once mocked by the man she had replaced. Today I'm here because it did. Because every accent, every background, every voice deserves to be heard. A hush fell. Even those who once doubted her found themselves listening, not to her tone, but to her truth. Then slowly applause began. It started soft, respectful, then grew, echoing through the hall like a promise kept. Naomi smiled faintly. Her voice, once dismissed, now carried across the nation, unshaken and unforgettable. True leadership isn't about how perfectly you speak. It's about how truthfully you stand. Mocking someone's voice might silence them for a moment, but it can never quiet the power of purpose.